Hey there and welcome back to Rimworld. My name is Pete and today we complete another episode of our Rimworld Anomaly Sea Ice Challenge with the transhumanist Paragons of Pandroth. Last time we left off after making some improvements to our sleeping quarters, improvements that might come back to bite us in case someone catches a metal horror infection. Thank you for pointing that out in the comments, but for now I think it's a risk we'll live with. Apart from that, Elpis and Light are still meditating in their small psycasting refuge. We attacked a silver mining outpost and explored the pit gate a bit, and that's what we have to deal with first today, as we hear a rumbling from the depths. Time to call in some help in the form of a war queen, hopefully arriving before the flesh beasts tear us to shreds. To improve our chances, we'll send Vulek out to lure them around a bit. As always, we're facing some solid numbers here. Our Sanguiphage does a good job catching their attention, however, although we still have a handful of flesh beasts heading for our base. As we assemble a small battalion to meet them, the War Queen and her entourage also arrive, and conveniently enough, right in the direction that Vulek is heading. I've seen this happen numerous times now in various playthroughs. It seems like these mechs have a tendency to appear close to the action, although it might also just be a lucky coincidence. Either way, the mechanoids open fire pretty much immediately, so we'll leave them to it, while we deal with the flesh beasts that have come for our base. With our melee fighters out in front, we should hopefully be safe from any finger spikes getting propelled behind our lines, and yes, this puts our ghouls and mechs at a risk of friendly fire, but they should survive, and if they don't, we can simply bring them back. And so the group is defeated rather swiftly. We've got a few more stragglers that we should have little trouble clearing out. The mechs are also decimating the remaining flesh beasts, so we'll have to take care of them soon too. For the moment though, let's focus on the entities. As expected, they don't offer too much resistance. Our ghouls are getting beat up quite severely here, but so far it's nothing that a few days of rest won't cure. The mechanoids, meanwhile, are moving on to clear out some stragglers of their own, and unfortunately both the War Queen as well as two centipedes are still alive, a bit more than I had hoped for. Still, with the centipedes and the War Queen's urchins still tangled up fighting flesh beasts, the War Queen herself is already coming for us, nice and isolated. So after waiting for her to get as close as possible, we'll have our melee fighters run out to swarm her while the rest of the colony provides fire support. As you know, getting heavy mechanoids locked into melee combat is probably the most reliable way of taking them down, although in the War Queen's case that is of course made a bit more difficult by the horde of small war urchin mechs following her, not to mention that it also seems like the two centipedes are now in firing range. Still, we have the numbers advantage and therefore managed to take the War Queen out while also dispatching of the urchins. Now we only need to rush the two centipedes as fast as possible so that they don't harm us too much. Luckily, both of them only have inferno cannons, which may be annoying, but don't actually deal that much damage. Still, all the injuries paired with the cold temperatures are a bit too much for our ghoul Midnight. Luckily, we still have plenty of combat power left, and so this should hopefully not take too long. And there we are, perhaps a bit messier than it needed to be, but for a no-killbox approach I think we handled it quite well, and can now reward ourselves with another power-focused chip, as well as with the recovery of a downed bulb freak. We are of course also going to install a heater here right away to keep the entity from freezing to death, as this will be a nice boost to our already very respectable bioferrite production. Pandrothian producer Lauren then tailors another masterwork Thrumbofur Parker, although we have no time to celebrate, as our captured Devourer picks this moment in time to make an escape. Luckily, it's only the one entity. This could have been much worse, with the Revenant or Metal Horror escaping too, but a single Devourer should be no match for our combined combat power. And indeed, the entity is thankfully not killed and can therefore be quickly put back in shackles. Our ghoul Midnight has also been put to bed to keep him alive in the cold, and so things are looking up, at least until a solar flare strikes the sea ice. This is of course not ideal, not only because it shuts down all heaters, but also because our entire food production relies on electricity, so we are left with no other choice really but to cut down any rice plants we have before they all die. Speaking of death, the absence of a heater also leads to the bulb freak's demise, so we now have another small entity problem on our hands, although once again by now we possess enough firepower to handle it swiftly. Nonetheless, a second bulb freak would have been nice, if only for the bioferrite. Perhaps we can find another one to capture down in the pit gate. A few hours later then, the power is back and we can already begin working on our second hydroponics farm. We are once more a bit shy on components at the moment, despite having more than 200 not too long ago, but a late tech colony like this one burns through them incredibly fast. At this point, we also want to accept this quest we received last episode, 91 manhunting polar bears in exchange for some top-tier psycasts and equipment, simply too good to pass up. Somewhat unnecessarily even, we also receive 11 mercenaries who we now have to house and feed. Not really ideal, considering that our plan here is to not actually hunt these polar bears. After all, for the entirety of this series, we've been raising funds for Polar Bears International, a non-profit focused on conserving polar bears and the sea ice they depend on. So far, we've raised over $5,000, which is absolutely insane, but it would also feel incredibly wrong to then mow them down in the game. So, shortly after our latest slave Karen gets 2 drill arms installed by Nightshade, making her the fastest deep driller this side of the Arctic, we call everyone back inside, close off our doors and await the arrival of 91 apex predators. And there they are, and our mission now is simple: we won't harm a single one of them. This means that for the next day or two we will be confined to the inside of our base. Not really a problem, as we are very much self-sufficient, but looking at the number of people who currently stay with us, it could get a bit cramped. Of course, Randy also has to pick at this exact moment to send 6 thrumbos our way. Thrumbos that we would of course love to hunt, but at the moment we can't do so unless we also want to annihilate the polar bears. With her anesthetic wearing off, Karen also starts wandering around in confusion, which might actually become a small problem because mental breaks ignore door and zoning restrictions, so we'll have the ghoul police come and beat her up. Yes, I know, a drastic measure, but our entire colony might be screwed if someone opens a door at the wrong moment. As a result of being locked in, life in the colony remains somewhat uneventful for the next few hours, while Elpis and Light make progress, and we can now perform the next anima tree linking ceremony to get Elpis to psycasting rank 3. Ellie, as well as 3 of our guests, are then hit by the plague, and we won't make the same mistake we made a while ago and try to tend this with herbal medicine, so Ellie gets a full dose of the good stuff here. That should make sure she survives. Using the long-range mineral scanner, Lauren then discovers a lump of plasteel not too far away, a material that is also in hot demand lately, so I think we'll send an expedition out there as soon as the polar bears have left. Elpis then gains his 3rd psycasting level, and we get to select from Beacon, Chaos Skip and Word of Love, an easy choice in my opinion, as Beacon has arguably the most utility out of the 3. Chaos Skip is just a bit too unpredictable, I feel. In addition, he can now also learn Vertigo Pulse from a side trainer we acquired a while back, and so, slowly but steadily, Elpis is in fact starting to live up to his potential. Back home meanwhile, one of our plague-ridden guests begins to ramble insanely, another mental break that could, in theory, ignore zoning restrictions, but since they are a guest, simply beating them down won't do. We'll deal with that shortly. For now, we've just stated a 3rd agri hand. I think that's necessary now that our setup is expanding, and we'll name this one Zip, as always after the patron supporter of the same name. Now, to keep our people from wandering outside, we then construct some temporary barriers. Certainly a bit of a crude way of ensuring that no one leaves, but I don't really feel like we will be able to reliably prevent all mental breaks, especially those on our guests, so it's the best option we have right now. Things then get even more interesting as a Nociosphere appears just outside of our base. Of course, this is once again not the moment to venture outside and bring it in, but we will definitely want to do so as soon as we can, as the Nociosphere is arguably one of the most useful entities out there. Our last one certainly helped us out numerous times. And it also looks like it won't be too long until we can in fact venture back out beyond our walls, as the first polar bears here are already leaving the map. Sadly though, that does not prevent our plague-ridden insane rambler from using the one exit that has not yet been blocked off to head out onto the sea ice and immediately get mauled. Well, this is certainly not great, as we don't really have a way of rescuing them out there while the majority of the bears is still roaming around, but perhaps an opportunity presents itself. In any case, we send Vulek and Ellie out to stand guard by the door, waiting for the right moment, and with just an hour left to live, that moment presents itself. So Vulek dashes out to grab the fallen mercenary, Ellie uses her stun psycast to keep the nearest bear from coming in, and the doors then close just in time. Now we only need Ellie to mend the damages faster than the bears can break the door down, while Vulek's Coagulate instantly heals all wounds and saves the life of our guest. Unfortunately though, a few hours later, it looks like it just wasn't meant to be. Due to the plague progressing and causing an increased level of pain, our prisoner perishes despite our efforts. We did all we could, I think. Luckily, the quest clearly marked these folks as expendable, so we are not punished here for this loss. Our two psycasters, meanwhile, receive some poorly aimed supplies from home, food and blood packs, that's all they need. The rest of the day they are either sleeping, meditating, or studying Elpis' unnatural doppelganger corpse. In the meantime, Slave Zamal suffers another mental break, but I think it should be safe now to leave the base. As you can see here, our hunting squad is not immediately attacked by frenzied polar bears, and so we can now hunt some thrumbos before they all leave the map too. Thanks to our mercenary friends, we certainly have enough firepower to make this a quick affair. Sadly though, it's not quick enough to catch all 6 thrumbos. 2 of them did manage to wander off the map to the north, while we fought their mates down south. Still, I'd call this a nice influx of meat and thrumbo fur, useful supplies to keep our base running. What also keeps our base running is power, and with a second hydroponics farm being built, it's time for bioferrite generator number 3. Our current production still very much covers that. Just in that moment, the last polar bear then wanders off, and we receive our rewards, and with that also say goodbye to our temporary allies. No time to waste then, as we immediately assemble a small team to explore the pit gate a bit further. At the very least, we want to clear out the 3 bulb freaks living down here, so that our tunneler Mulch Butler can strip the place of its resources. Taking those 3 entities on one after another makes this a comparatively easy affair. Our ghouls once again take some hits, but again nothing that they won't be able to heal in a few hours. Exploring the remaining caves and tunnels then sadly does not reveal any more valuables aside from a small vein of compacted machinery, and so the only area we're leaving undisturbed for now is the one where we located the Dreadmeld a while back. Tunneler Mulch Butler is already getting to it, mining out the pit gate's 2 steel veins, while our cave explorers haul a few goodies back to the surface, including some dead flesh beasts to slaughter. Elpis' psycasting mentor Light then urgently needs to death rest, and so our young colony leader will have to take care of himself for the next 4 days. I suppose that too can be part of his challenge to achieve personal and psycasting growth. Back home, meanwhile, more insane ramblings, this time from Nightshade, but apart from that, things remain calm. The Nociosphere has of course already been brought into containment and is currently being studied and suppressed by Vulek, And so, all in all, after a few eventful days, we've got a bit of peace and quiet. We are also informed that Elpis has found a way to safely dispose of the unnatural corpse, and of course we want him to do so immediately. There really is no point in letting this thing wake up. Mulch Butler's mining efforts, which have already produced well over 1,000 steel, are then supported by Lifterbot Axme24, who now begins hauling all of that back to the surface, a task that will most likely take a few days. In the meantime, we unlock the Blood Rain ritual, a great way to defend against sieges, should we ever get any. And up next, let's study Brain Wipe, the last remaining psychic ritual we have not yet unlocked, and a way to not only remove traumatic memories from pawns, but also to recruit unwaveringly loyal prisoners, should that ever be needed. Afterwards, Ellie gets to slaughtering everything we or the mechanoids killed over the last few days. Colony wealth is approaching 250,000 silver, by the way, so we're about 2/3 of the way to what we need to unlock the Arconexus ending, which we will explore in some form, I think, but of course all the Anomaly endgame stuff will also have to happen. Ghoul Midnight then enters the Gene Extractor just to increase our collection, and we start flooring our hydroponics farm to increase the room's impressiveness and to also reduce dirt being carried around the base. From Midnight we then extract the Awful Animals gene, this one we do not yet have, and we can immediately also plug in Nightshade. Even though we already possess all of her genes, some of those we only have in packages together with other genes, and this could allow us to isolate a few useful ones. While Mulch Butler then mines a small vein of gold, our deep drilling efforts call up an infestation, but compared to what we recently had, this one is absolutely tiny. So there's really not a whole lot of effort demanded from us here to take it down, and after a short while we can add some insect to our list of frozen meats. A high-intensity psychic drone then strikes for all females, just as we extract the Very Happy gene from Nightshade, and I think with all of that completed, we have reached a good point to wrap up today's episode. There was a lot going on today, and it may not always have felt like we're making progress, but we also need to consider what we're currently doing for Elpis, who now has several incredibly powerful side trainers waiting for him back home. And speaking of Elpis, today's fan art by Tony Murchison also features our young leader prominently, together with his mentor Light, a relationship that I'm still not entirely sure everyone in the colony approves of, and we'll still have to decide upon what to do with Light himself eventually, but that's a decision for another day, I'd say. For today, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, then I would be very happy if you could leave a thumbs up. Of course, if you like what I'm doing and want to support me and my channel further, then you can go ahead and subscribe to stay up to date, grab some merch over on shop.petecomplete.com, or check out and maybe even pledge to the Pete Complete Patreon. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.